So today we're going to try making something that's Mediterranean inspired. It's something that you might see maybe in a gyro sense or something like that. It's a variation on a theme. So it's typically done with a sort of a spice meat that would be done on a spit, and then you put it on some sort of pita or some other sort of flatbread, and then you would have some toppings with it, some sides, maybe a little tzatziki or something with it. So my variation is to kind of change it up a little bit and make it a little bit different. So you could use some ground lamb, ground turkey, ground beef. I'm using Beyond Meat as my base, and Beyond Meat has all the textures and everything like you would have in one of the other products, and it's very similar. And the way I make it, it comes out kind of the same as far as that goes. Now, you can also use like hunks of chicken or hunks of other meat that you might want to use. You could use pieces of lamb, pieces of chicken, or whatever, and do those the same way. And you do a similar treatment to them, and you can make it together. I'm doing a chickpea version that's actually chickpea nuggets, basically, that I've spiced the same way and making the same thing. And I'm going to take you through how I made the whole thing, and we'll see how it comes together. But you can use really any meat you want with this same sort of topping and spice to it, and it comes out really, really good. So let's get started making some chickpea nuggets. And this is my replacement for chicken. You can use some other things if you like. If you like seitan, you can do that. But I like this one. So I'm going to start with a can of chickpeas, and I'm going to put about a half a cup of vegetable stock in the chickpeas. I've drained them off, and otherwise I'm going to use them just like this. So that'll get the base started. That's the main thing I want to have in there. I'm going to add some vegetables too. I'm going to go ahead and add some carrots in there because I think carrots add a richness to it, give you a little vitamin content. I think that's not a bad thing to have a few carrots. Gives a little more flavor too, a little texture, because that's the important thing here. You want something that's texturally kind of nice. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add an onion. Just cut up a whole onion and just put it in the food processor. And then I'll add about a quarter cup of oatmeal. And these are the steel cut oats that need to be absorb some moisture, but I think that'll work. I'm going to put some garlic and some smoked paprika in there because I think that'll give it a little bit of body and a little bit of heat, and I'll mix them up. So this is the first time I'm making this, so I'm going to add some mustard too just to give it a little flavor, sort of an idea I had just to get this going. A little olive oil just to add a little bit of creaminess to it, to make it a little nicer. This won't be a vegan dish. I'm going to go ahead and add eggs, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and make it this way because it gives it a little binding. I'll go ahead and lid it up and start blending. Now, I think I overmixed this just a little bit when I made it, but the texture I wanted was something a little bit thicker, so that way it would have made a little bit better patties. As it is, it's a little bit thin, but I think I can use it. I can make it work for what I want. I'm going to go ahead and put it on a sheet pan and then get them in the oven. Now, the amount I made here is going to make about 24 of these, this size. This is just going to give me a nice little thing to have. They're really easy to make. I mean, you saw that actually took probably about 5 to 7 minutes to actually make it and grind it up. And they're going to cook for about 20 minutes on about 375 degrees. And that'll get me a nice texture to them so they're already cooked so I can use them later. This is what they look like when they came out. Now I'm going to start actually making my sauce, and I'm actually going to make two different things here. I'm going to use some Beyond Meat to replace my meat component, and then I'm also going to do these as like the chicken component. So let's start with the Beyond Meat first. I'm going to go ahead and chop up an onion and put it in a bowl. Now, the finer you chop it, the more it combines in there. I like it just like this. I put a little bit of olive oil. I don't use a lot. Maybe it's a tablespoon or two. I don't really measure this. This recipe, I actually don't measure. It's kind of funny. It's the juice of about 1 lemon, because I think the lemon adds a really nice component to it. A tiny bit of salt, maybe a tablespoon or so of salt, maybe a half a tablespoon, and then some oregano, and that's about 2 tablespoons of oregano. And then it's yogurt. I like the nice, thick Greek yogurt, and I'll use maybe about a quarter cup of it or so. And then I'll add my Beyond Meat. And again, you could use any meat you want in here. Beyond Meat looks just like meat, so it's a perfect substitute for this. But if you wanted to use lamb, turkey, beef, whatever you like, you could make it work here. The idea is to use these components to make something that's really tasty, and you'll get a really nice dish coming together here. So let's go ahead and just set this off to the side, and we'll get started with my chickpea nuggets. So now let's get started with those chickpea nuggets. I'm going to do a similar sort of sauce. The only thing I'm going to leave out are the onions because they're already in the chickpea nuggets. So I'm going to do the juice of about maybe a half a lemon. I like to take my lemons and my limes and I juice them from a big bag, and then I will freeze them and use them as I need it. I find it much easier that way. I'll go ahead and use some oregano. maybe a tablespoon or so, and then a tablespoon of olive oil, and then maybe a teaspoon of salt, and then my Greek yogurt. Again, probably about a quarter cup or so of Greek yogurt. Again, it's sort of an eyeball thing. I like it to have the right sort of mixture to it, and then I'll use it. Now, you could do this a lot of different ways. You could coat them like I'm doing here. You could put them in a plastic bag and stick them in the fridge. If you're dealing with like chicken or something, that's probably a better idea because it's a little bit easier to deal with. But the idea is you want them all coated with the yogurt mix. And that way, when you grill them, they're going to get a nice little flavor to them because the flavor will go in a little bit. And then the grill will impart a little something on it. Then they've got that lemony texture on the outside, which really makes them nice. It's a huge thing when you're able to do it because you're adding so much flavor to it. Now, again, you pick the meats you want to use. I did this as a totally vegetarian option. If you wanted a different vegetarian option, you could do seitan, you could do tempeh. You could do a lot of different things. You could create your own jackfruit thing. So I've taken my Beyond Meat and I've put it on a aluminum foil place here so that I can have it on my grill. I like to do this on the grill. It gives it the great smokiness. By doing it this way first, it actually takes some of the moisture out and makes it stick together just a little bit better. As you noticed, it was a little bit loose when I was making it. So this actually starts to cook it on one side, and then I'll flip it over, and that'll make the thing a little bit more stable so that when I flip it back, it gets a little bit of texture on it. So that'll work out pretty well. I also like to I'm actually using a naan bread. You could use pita, lavash, something else that you like, but I like a naan bread for this. It's kind of nice. And I'm just grilling it up a little bit to give it a little bit of flavor. In fact, I'm going to flip it right now as we speak here. Look at it. Give it a quick flip. That's nice. See, it gives it a little char, a little texture. Just makes it kind of nice. That one's a little less cooked, but that's okay. It's got a little, you can see it's a little crusty on the outside, and that's all right. So we'll let these cook for a little bit. I'll just cook these up. Once that gets going, I'll give it a flip, and then we'll have something nice for working with here. Just a nice dish. This is a very pleasant thing with all the flavors and spices in it and so forth. It comes together really nicely, very easy, and then we'll add some toppings to it. So one of the things I think about when I make this dish is we've called it sort of a Greek style. And the reason I changed it is to call it Mediterranean is because it's really not Greek particularly. The way the sauce comes together and so forth, it's not really a Greek dish per se, but it does have that sort of Mediterranean style. You could almost see it if you were at a one of these places that has a spit, whether it's Middle Eastern or sometimes even Greek, where they have these different foods that are there that they cook. It looks something like that. In fact, let's take a look at the product on the grill and see what it looks like. So here's my meatloaf, my Beyond Meat burger that I've created here, and let's go ahead and flip it once here. There we go. And as you can see, when it comes across like that, it actually looks a little bit like meat. It looks just like you would see if you were doing a lamb loaf or some sort of turkey or chicken loaf or something like that, or even a beef loaf. It looks just like it. And with the spices, you really don't notice the difference. Now these are my chickpea burgers, my chickpea nuggets that I made. And you can see they're getting charred up nicely. That should make them really flavorful and nice, hopefully. It'll be really good. Open there. One of the things I like cooking with vegetables especially is you can, depending on the vegetables you're working with, put them back in the dish that you actually marinated them in. So I had all these sitting in my glass bowl that's sitting to my left here. And as I take them off, I'm going to put them back in that glass bowl. Now these guys were already cooked. I had cooked them previously. And I'm just giving them a little char on the outside. So really no big deal to put them back in a dish that they were in previously. I'll just put them right in there as I'm taking them off. A couple of these are a little more cooked perhaps, but the idea is to give them a little char and give them add a little bit of flavor to it, so the flavor gets a little deeper. So that way you've got something that really comes together as a nice dish in that sense. It's got a little depth to it. It's got the chickpeas and it's got all the other flavors, but then it's got that lemon flavor that goes with it, with the oregano and everything. It should be really good. Oh. So when it comes off the grill, here's my Beyond Meat, my chickpeas, and my naan bread. Now I'm going to start assembling sandwiches almost like a gyro. Now you can put anything you want on here. You can use some tzatziki, you can use hummus, you can use tomatoes, red onions, olives, feta cheese, whatever you like you can put on there. And you come up with a sandwich that's just this delectable, succulent thing. Whether you're using meat or not meat, it's terrific.